So some recruiting news this week, and it wasn't exactly the positive kind. On Monday, Donovan Jeter, the four-star defensive lineman from Beaver Falls, announced his commitment, and he committed to Notre Dame. And that's a rough one for a lot of reasons. For Pitt fans, as Pitt fans have talked about all week, it's a rough one for a lot of reasons. For the Pitt coaching staff, there are a couple of reasons why I think it really stings that Pitt lost Donovan Jeter to Notre Dame. The first is that they really thought they were going to get him. Nothing's definite. You never deal in absolutes when you talk about recruiting. Even when something seems to be absolutely 100% locked in, it never really is. But they still felt pretty confident. And most people around the situation felt pretty confident that Pitt was going to land Donovan Jeter. This was sort of one of those givens that eventually, well, when they get Jeter, Donovan Jeter, he's going to commit on Halloween, and he's going to commit to Pitt. And he takes a visit to Notre Dame over the weekend. And in pretty much one weekend, and it was a bit of a whirlwind, they flipped him. They didn't flip him. He hadn't committed to Pitt, but they landed him and got his commitment on Monday. And that stings. When you think you've got something more or less locked up, and again, nothing's definite, but you feel like you got something locked up, and you lose it. The other thing that sort of stings, and not really sort of, the other thing that stings about losing Donovan Jeter is that he continues a bit of a trend with WPIAL recruits in the current class and even the next class leaving the area, and not just leaving the area, but going to Notre Dame. It's Donovan Jeter. It's the two kids from Central Catholic, David Adams and Kurt Heinisch. It's Josh Lugg from North Allegheny, Robert Hainsey, who's from Western PA, but now goes to high school in Florida. It's in the next year's class, Phil Dracovic, the quarterback from Pine Richland. All of these top guys from the WPIAL not staying home, not staying in state, going out to South Bend. And look, you're going to lose some recruits to South Bend. It happens. Everybody loses recruits to Notre Dame. It happens. But I think what might sting the most for Pitt fans specifically out of this whole development, and it's not just Jeter. Jeter's the latest one, following that line of Heinisch and Adams and Lugg and Dracovic. It's the Jeter being the most recent that kind of set it off again. The thing that I think stings the most for Pitt fans is that it really feels like it's the opposite of where Pitt was in January and February. You remember how they finished that 2016 recruiting class. You remember how excited people were, how much momentum it felt like there was. And now, not only does it feel like things aren't moving in that direction anymore, it feels like they're moving in the opposite direction. Instead of cleaning up in the WPIAL like they did and finishing as strong as they did, and then getting Paris Ford as a start to the 2017 class, they've gone the opposite way, and they've lost every other four-star recruit in the WPIAL senior class. And that, I think, is what makes it difficult, because after all of these steps forward, now there are these steps back. And I think what it really hammers home, the real lesson to take out of all of this, the thing to be reminded of, is that when you're rebuilding, like Pat Narduzzi is rebuilding, when you're rebuilding not just a roster, but a program and a culture and the perception of a program, especially that last point, it's not all one direction forward. It's not all linear motion in the same direction. There are going to be steps forward and there are going to be steps back. What's difficult is when you have those steps back, you start to question whether or not those steps forward really, not did they count, but were they as significant as you thought they were? And I think what you have to ultimately ask yourself, when you have these individual moments that seem like steps back, you have to ask yourself, do we have the right people in charge? Are the right people in charge of this program? Pat Narduzzi, his staff, the larger administration, the athletic department. And I think when you look at it, you still feel positive or encouraged. You still see a lot of encouraging signs from the last nearly 2 years of the Pat Narduzzi era. Does one rough year in the WPIAL cancel all of that out? I don't think it does. But that's the question you have to ask yourself. And if you come away from that feeling like, you know what, that this was tough, this was rough losing Jeter and all these guys, but I still think Pat Narduzzi's the right guy, then you sort of chalk it up as a rough recruiting loss, and you move on and see what he does next.